Hi everyone, I hope you're well. My name is Molly. I'm a mum here in the UK of 2 children. My husband and I have a biological 4-year-old little girl, and last year we brought home our gorgeous little 1-year-old boy through UK adoption. I get many messages in my inbox from people who are thinking about adoption, wondering if they can do it because they've had some hard times or some challenges, whether it be in their childhood or in recent years, that they think will void them from being able to be a parent through adoption. And this often is not the case, so I'm really keen to do a video on how you can use your challenges as a strength as an adopter, and why it's important to value that any trauma or any challenges you've been through in your life can help you as a parent to a child who is adopted. I first want to say that there is no perfect parent for adoption. It does not exist. There's definitely a stereotype of the adopter profile out there, and it's so not true. I hope I contribute to busting that myth. I'm a young adopter, I know single adopters, I know gay adopters, I know older adopters, I know disabled adopters. There are so many different kinds of adopters, and that includes adopters who've had really difficult pasts. Some adopters are care leavers themselves. Some adopters have been adopted by their families and their parents themselves, and some of us have struggled with mental health, some of us have struggled with baby loss, some of us have really struggled as a result of bereavement or parental separations or marriage challenges, and all of these do not disqualify you from becoming an adopter. Now, I just do want to flag up that I cannot give advice and I'm not a professional. I'm talking about my experience here and just what I know from going through the process. Every different case is case dependent, so it's definitely something that you'd need to speak with a local authority or a local adoption agency about in more detail. But hopefully I can reassure you that in most cases, past trauma can be used as a strength. As I said, there is no perfect parent in adoption. Social workers do not want to see a parent coming through the process who has had a perfect life, because chances are if you've had a perfect life, you are not going to be able to empathise with some of the really difficult times your future child or children will have had. The fact that you will have gone through some challenging times, whatever that is for you, a challenge is personal to yourself. So whatever personal challenge you have been through is relevant because you can empathise with a child, whether you have experienced loss, whether a challenge has left you with some, PTSD, or you've experienced trauma as a result of that, whether it's physical trauma or mental or emotional trauma, it doesn't matter. You will be able to empathise with the loss and the trauma that that child will have gone through before they become adopted. So it's important to remember that you will be able to relate to a child and the feelings that they are probably feeling, which will enable you to become a better parent. All children will have trauma, and that's something really important to remember. Even a newborn that is coming from the hospital to a foster to adopt placement will have trauma, because adoption in itself is trauma. Adoption is life-changing, it is humongous, it has a long-term impact on a child. It in itself is trauma. So it's really important not to diminish any child's experience of trauma just because they were adopted young. As a parent to these children, it's really crucial that we understand how trauma impacts them, and we can learn from our own experiences there. We may not have had the same experiences, but for example, with my past mental health struggles, I had a lot of trauma as a result of that. I've experienced separations within my family, I've experienced loss, and although I can't maybe experience the amount of loss that my son has had, I know how that has impacted me mentally, physically and emotionally, so I am better in a position to empathise with him. And that gives me a lot more motivation to therapeutically parent and make sure that I'm giving him the best care I possibly can. It is a real strength to have pulled through some difficult times, whatever this difficult time is for you, and social workers, adoption agencies and local authorities will recognise that. The fact that you will have pulled through this challenge, will have learnt from it, will have bettered yourself, and as a result have come out stronger, is such an invaluable strength as a parent who is wanting to adopt. I know when I was going through the adoption process, I certainly had a lot of thoughts about, oh my gosh, if I mention this, then they're not going to want me to adopt anymore. This will mean I'm not going to be able to adopt. Like I said, I've had past mental health issues. I've had some difficulties in my late childhood. I had some struggles at school. I've had definitely some rocky relationship challenges in more recent years. that were not early on. They can even be recent things that you've pulled through. And these were completely understood and empathised with by our social worker, because I had pulled through all of these. I had engaged support, which is a strength in itself, and I'd learnt from them. And they put me in a really valuable position to empathise with my future child. Stage 2 of the adoption process does go into very great detail about some of the challenges you'll have faced, because the adoption process covers everything pretty much from the moment you were born to the moment you were having that meeting with your social worker. It covers absolutely everything. So you will have long and lengthy detailed discussions with your social worker about these times, and you need to know that that is okay. It is okay to open up. It's okay to cry. I certainly had sessions with my social worker where I came out nearly in tears, and it's okay. It's okay to feel those feelings. And I often felt that if I showed that I was still upset, then a social worker would take that as that I've not healed and that I've not grieved and I'm not okay. And that wasn't the case at all. It's okay to realise that you can be emotional. What I learned from this was that social workers recognise that you can't have healed completely from your trauma. You can't have healed from all this grief. You've just learned how to better process it. And that, as parents, is what we're going to want to do with our children. We have to accept that we cannot heal them. We cannot erase their trauma or their neglect or their loss or what they're feeling, but we can help them to process it, to become okay with that, and just work out how to help them function having that trauma in their everyday lives. Another really important thing to realise is that you will have your referees to vouch for you. Now, I have done a video on references in the adoption process, which I will link down below, but your referees will be asked a lot, most likely about some of the harder times in your life, because these are the areas social workers want to know about. They want to know about all the hard things that you've been through and why you are the person that you are today. So in my experience, my referees were asked about mental health, they were asked about miscarriages, they were asked about relationship troubles, even my employer was asked about all of this, and they all vouched for me. They all said that yes, Molly pulled through this is what she did, this is how she's learned from it, and I think she's a different person now because of this, and I think it will benefit her as a parent because of X. As I mentioned earlier, engaging support in past challenges is such a strength. It's nothing to be ashamed of. I very fortunately accessed support in all of the challenges that I've had. Even in most recent years, I've still accessed support. This is not seen as a weakness, because social workers want to know that you have support in place and that you have the motivation and the awareness and the confidence to access that support should you have any troubles when you have brought your children home through adoption. Because adoption brings around its own challenges. It can be hard. Therapeutic parenting can be hard, and sometimes you do need to access support. And so the fact that you have accessed this in the past will give them confidence that you will access this in the future. When we got to panel and we were asked about, for example, my mental health, it was flagged up as a strength that I'd access support, because panel felt that they were confident in me to access that in the future as well, and for my husband to support me in doing so. So it's important to recognise that that is also an incredible strength as a parent through adoption. Now that I've kind of run through why it's so important to recognise that trauma is a strength for you as an adoptive parent, my top tip, and the only tip I am going to give you in this video, is to be open and honest from the outset. It's so easy to go into the adoption process wanting to conceal information that you think is going to work against you, and that is not going to do you any favours when further down the process or further down the line something comes up that has never been mentioned. Be honest and open from the outset. Me and my husband fully committed to this. We had our first 7-hour interview with our adoption social worker before we even signed on to stage 1 of the adoption process, and we just regurgitated our lives, all the good, all the bad, all of the things I really didn't want to share and didn't want to talk about, because they were my trauma, they were my losses, the things I grieved. But we were really, really recognised for that, and both our approvals panel and matching panel said, you've had these challenges, but you have been very open and honest with us from the beginning. We really value that. We've been able to explore that as a result. We've been able to understand why this will benefit you all as an adoptive parent. So please be open, be honest with your adoption agency and your local authority and your social worker. It is really hard to do, but I promise it is the best thing that you can do in this situation. I hope that that's been helpful and hopefully reassured some of you that have had some difficult times that you are worried about, that it might not necessarily impact the adoption process. As I said, everything is case dependent. You would need to have some discussions with your social worker about that. But if you do have any questions, please do comment them below, or you can find me on Instagram at MollyMamaAdopt. Please do also subscribe to my channel for more adoption related content. I will be going back to work soon. And as much as I am kind of excited for it, I'm aware that I'm not going to have as much time to upload videos, so I'm trying to stay on it. And if you have any suggestions, please again comment them below and I will add them to my list so I can get around to filming them. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Bye!